more talks. This next conversation, we have Martha Ellen Thompson. I think, yeah, you have a session immediately after this, or no? You don't? Oh, okay. I thought you had like another session.
Yesterday.
Oh, you're right. It is Saturday. Just kidding. I know, for real. All the days are blending. Okay, well, she had a session yesterday called Preparing STEM Graduate Students to Co-Design Innovative Humanitarian Solutions. So this topic was interesting to me. As someone, going through grad school myself, just taking advantage of the different types of resources that are out there, I'm just like really interested to kind of learn a little bit more. But a quick bio is that Martha Thompson is a co-instructor for Humanitarian Innovation Design for Relief, Recovery, and Rebuilding. And and then she's a humanitarian worker with a focus on gender exclusion and crisis situations. And so how are you? How's it going?
I'm fine, thank you. Very happy to be here.
How'd your talk go yesterday?
It went really well.
Okay.
There were three of us talking about innovation in graduate education.
So what is that? So is it like restructuring how graduate students are using their research, or like what exactly does that mean?
Well, our focus, innovations in graduate education, is how do we prepare the next generation of scientists to work to meet the current challenges in the world. Mm-hmm. And our focus is on humanitarian work. So we work with students who want to go into work with people who've been impacted by conflict or crisis. So there are about 136 million people who have been forcibly displaced by crisis, and we work in that sector, trying to train graduate students who are going into that work.
And by crisis, is it like from climate disasters, or just like, what are we encompassing as crisis?
Our focus is on people impacted by war. So people who've been impacted by the wars in Syria, Gaza, Sudan, the Congo, Yemen, Myanmar. Mm-hmm.
How are you recruiting students to be a part of this, especially if at least for STEM students, sometimes the work that they're doing in the lab is like so isolating and also can be like so niche and specific. So is the humanitarian aspect of the project they're working on related to the research, or just something separate?
No, we're really looking at people who are engineers, designers, people who might be architects, medical personnel, people working in computer tech. They all have important roles. Like in refugee camps, an engineer would design a solar system or a sanitation system. Medical personnel would set up medical care for maybe 100,000 people. So those are the people that we're looking to work with.
Yeah, and is there already like infrastructure or like projects in place, or is it like they have to pitch or come up with their own idea of like what?
No, we have a lot of work in 2 refugee camps in Uganda and work in South Sudan. And we're going to begin work in refugee camps in Kenya. So we already have a lot of work there, and we have partners that we work with.
Okay, yeah. Can you give us an example of like, how does the collaboration or the interdisciplinariness kind of like work to get these humanitarian projects going?
Sure. We work with a Ugandan NGO, and we work with a South Sudanese NGO and refugee-led organization. And what we do at D-Lab, we think of design for people, design with people, and design by people. And so our work focuses on design with. So we work with students, refugees, and NGO workers on design projects. So right now we put out a call for design projects that refugees and NGOs want to work with in the camps. So they've come up with 9 different design projects.
Wow.
So one is a legal aid system that's an app, one is a drip irrigation system, one is a way to do egg incubation. There is an emergency alert for people all over the camp when they need to go to the hospital. So we're going to bring 15 students in the middle of March to spend a week there with the NGOs and the refugees in a co-creation process to come up with the design for these projects. Because if we're doing that from here, we don't understand the problems in the context and the culture there. So we do it with the refugees. And the refugees who are participating in this have all been trained in design through another project of ours where refugees go through design training and actually design and build appropriate technologies. So they know how to do design, and we bring them together with the NGOs and the students, and then when the students come back, they'll continue working on these projects. So our focus is to train students to understand how to do co-creation, how to listen to people, what are the power dynamics that come up, how do you lead a co-creation process, so that when they go out into the field, they will know how to involve refugees and displaced in their planning processes.
And so this is considered like human design, like human-centric design, or like...
Well, it's more out there than human-centered design, because human-centered design is really designed for. You do a lot of consultation with people, but you lead and control the design process. But we're teaching students to co-create. So they lead a co-creation process that brings everybody into the design process, not just into consultation.
So, okay, so what does like the design process look like aside from like kind of, you know, listening to each other and hearing it out? I guess like what does the design process look like?
Sure. We have an 8-step design process. So we begin by trying to get information about what the problem is. Just doing and there are all kinds of ways you get information. So first we look at information, and then from that information, we frame the problem. And what we find out a lot in humanitarian works is a lot of times the issue is that people don't have the right problem. They're not trying to solve the right problem. They're trying to solve a problem that they see, but not necessarily what the refugees see. Like for example, in Jordan, you had Syrian refugees, and they needed to have more income than they already had. And so the NGOs wanted to do income generation as a project. But what turned out, the refugees by law couldn't earn any more. So the problem was that they were paying too much traveling for their work. So the refugees came up with an idea of kind of a refugee-run Airbnb, so people didn't have to travel from one city to another.
Nice.
So it's like, how do you find the right problem? So you gather information, you figure out the problem, then you come up with a series of ideas, and we do this by a lot of interactive things, making models, almost introducing games into this. So they come up with a lot of ideas, then they choose an idea, then they make sketch models, physical sketch models of the idea. They choose the best sketch model, and then they start to build that model. Then they get feedback on that model, and then they refine it. So that's the entire design process.
And is there like an iterative cycle, or like
Yes,
is there a testing period, or?
Once you get feedback, you start a new phase, and you go through that cycle again.
And is this funded? Like who's helping like support like getting these projects off the ground, or like?
We used to have funding from USAID, but we don't. We now have funding from the Korean Foreign Aid Office. We have funding from the Canadian Red Cross. We just finished a big project with GIZ's Germany, so we get a lot of funding from foreign aid offices all over the world. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there infrastructure? I don't know if infrastructure is the right word, but like sometimes I see when we design things, it's just kind of like a drop-off solution that we like did a proof of concept, kind of left it there. It's like almost like mission work sometimes, where you're just like you go there, you did your thing, you felt good, but then like that was it. It's like, do you guys work into the collaboration of like how do we keep this long? Like what is the longevity of this project that we designed?
That's a really, really good question, because a lot of stuff is designed and just dropped off in places. But this is. For example, we have these long-standing relationships now of 4 to 5 years, and we have innovation centers in the camps run by our partners. We've trained those partners to have design trainers, and they run the innovation centers. So they do design training every month. We're bringing in the NGOs because they have the power to take the good ideas and make them part of a program. So some of the things that people design are just things for themselves, for labor saving and to earn income. But all the things that we're going to be doing in March, NGOs have already agreed to take those things into their work.
What do you think? Have you seen like an impact or a change in behavior from like the STEM students that are working with this? Like, do you feel like they changed their perspective, their outlook, their view look, or?
A huge change. The big change is, we've done learning outcomes, and by going through the class, they feel that they have shifts in understanding bias, mindset, power. They feel they know how to run a co-creation. But when we actually take them to the field, that is a huge shift. It's funny because all year we talk about the importance of listening to the refugees and having the refugees involved in the design. And they say those words, yes, that's very important. But once they actually are in the design process with the refugees, they come out of there going, oh my God, the refugees are so innovative. We could never have designed this without them. So that moment of actually practicing is completely transformational.
How do you go about selecting, like if there's only 15 students, like how do you go about selecting who's like the best fit, or like, you know, are you looking at like who's going to benefit the most? Yeah, I'm curious as to like who gets to.
We try to take people who are interested and are good standing with the class. So we try to give an opportunity to everybody if we can.
Yeah.
But you have to be a good stand. You have to be serious because this is really hard work. They are working 12 to 14 hours a day when they're there.
Okay. What has been like one of the maybe not barriers, I guess, like what's a challenge that you've seen that's like a common challenge that most of them face during this like either design process or just even like just working in this environment? Or
well, you know, it's different. They have different challenges when they go to different places.
okay.
We did a lot of work in Greece with unaccompanied refugee minors. So these are young, they're really boys because they're all below 18, and they were traveling to Europe as refugees by themselves. And we set up, with a partner there, we set up a design center to sort of help these young men stabilize and build trusting relationships again. And we used the design process as a way for them to do that. And students were so impacted by seeing people who were younger than they were in those kind of situations and hearing their stories. So I think for students, some of the hardest things is they get close to the refugee. They form a relationship, and hearing the stories of what people went through, like what people went through fleeing Sudan to get to Uganda, and the experiences that the refugees have had, and also seeing people who are their age or a little younger or a little older than they are, and they have such a different life experience because these are students from Harvard and MIT, you know, and they see that these are people with incredible potential, and they have so little opportunity.
Yeah, I guess I have a clarification question is, if you're working with a very vulnerable population, like how are you gaining access to like the refugees? Is it through the NGOs, or like how are you getting them included or want to participate in this?
To work in the camps, we have to get permission. We have to present our project, what we're doing, and it has to be approved by the Office of the Prime Minister and by the Refugee Council. And so our partners they're present in the camp and working in the camp, and they advocate for us. But the students are very much part of the program that the partners are doing. It's nothing they're doing on their own. And we do a lot of work with the students to orient them about what it's like, and they have to sign a code of conduct. And so we do a lot of preparation before we bring them.
And are you know, these refugee populations I know you mentioned it's like a co-collaboration, but like they're for sure a part of like the conversation of like providing the
yes, they have to be. We have it so in every team it's 4 refugees, 2 NGO workers, and the student.
Okay.
But the students are going through a lot of training on power, bias, and mindsets, and learning about the power differences and how do you address them and how you support other people to participate fully.
Yeah. Is this only unique to like the Harvard MITs, or is like there's other infrastructure? Is like, you know, I guess is the model to then later have other different types of hubs within the country to kind of like support this type of initiative? Or
our work that we talked about yesterday is we developed what we call the co-creation toolkit for STEM graduates. So it is a series of curricular materials to prepare students to do this kind of work. And we're in the second iteration, so that's available. Some teachers at Ann Arbor are pioneering it, but to actually set up the work to come to the refugee camps, that's a step farther than we have developed so far.
Yeah. But it's not exclusive. I know you specifically look into just like more like, you know, people that were been displaced. But can this toolkit be applied to like other humanitarian?
Oh, completely.
Okay.
In fact, other humanitarian organizations are using parts of the toolkit because they find it so helpful. And it can be used. We did a lot of work in 2015, 2016 with disaster response, the same kind of techniques. So you can also do it in disaster work.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Do we have any questions for Martha Thompson? No. All right. Well, thank you for taking your
so
time
welcome.
for just entertaining this interview. Thank you
So
so
welcome.
much.
Should I give this to the...
No, it's okay. I'll keep it.